last time we started our discussion talking about what anyone remembers? We were talking about headlines, but we discussed them in
Arabic rules.
Good. We discussed Arabic rules for writing news headlines. And why did we say it's important to learn the rules of writing headlines? Why shouldn't I just learn how to translate? Yeah, why is learning how to write a headline is important? Because as a translator, you don't just translate headlines, you have to rewrite them to suit the audience and serve the purpose of why they're written. And what might be attractive in the source language does not necessarily mean it's attractive in the target language. What makes sense in source language does not necessarily make sense in target language, correct? Yeah? Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So today we're going to move forward and we're going to discuss writing news headlines or headlines in general in English. But today we're also going to have some exercises in English and in Arabic. And we might start with the body of a political or an economic or an entertainment article and how we translate them and what's the difference when we translate, for example, a political article or a news, a piece of news or an entertainment article. Is there a difference or not? Of course, there's a difference. That's the obvious answer. But what is the difference? We're going to address these issues in our coming lectures and today, inshallah. Okay, so rules for headlines in English, they generally have the same sense in Arabic, but there are certain differences that we need to be careful with. And last time we mentioned some differences when we talked about prepositions and when we talked about articles and the use of and but. So let's start with the first rule. Now, we need to be always using the present tense. But what if the piece of news is something in the past? Okay, what if it is a past interview, a past action? Do we still use the present tense? Yes, we use the present tense. Why? Because it's a piece of news and you're keeping the audience updated with what's happening. Can you give me a second? Yeah. So like I was saying, we need to use the present tense. Can you give us an example? Yes. Wildcats defeat Tigers. This is a headline for a sports report. Wildcats is a team. Tigers is also a team. And the news here is that this team defeated this team. Now, the use is in the present simple or present tense, but the action itself was done in the past because the match took place in the past. Why? This is it, this is how they write headlines. Okay, what if I'm going to say something that's going to happen in the future? Can I still be using present simple? Should I be using the future? Never use will. Never use will. Did you hear that? Did you catch it? Did you write it down? Never use will. For example, protests in Sheikh Jarrah will take place tomorrow. No, don't. don't use will. So what do I use? Is going to? Again, no. We use to plus the verb. So we say, for example, protests to take place in Sheikh Jarrah. Using to indicates the future. So what if I'm talking about something that is in the present, happening, continuous? You might use the present simple, or you might use the present continuous, but without verb to be. Let me write them down for you. Okay, where is it? Text. So number one, do not use will to indicate the future. Use to plus the verb. Example, protests to take place in Sheikh Jarrah, for example. Number two, if it is something continuous and you want to emphasize that it is happening now, use verb plus ing without verb to be. Protests taking place in Sheikh Jarrah. Okay, but usually we use the present simple tense. So these are side rules. Write them down or save the screen. Use active verbs. What's the opposite of active? Passive, right? So it shouldn't be, for example, survey reveals students fed up. Not, for example, let's say, the occupation, no, sorry, not the occupation. UNRWA donates food to refugees. Okay, this is active. Food donated to refugees by UNRWA. This is passive. When you do a headline, you do it in the active mode, not the passive mode. So that's basically the first three main rules. Like we said, don't use be verbs. So no is, no was, no am, okay, no are. Leave out articles. A second ago, I wanted to write a headline and I said the occupation. And then I was like, no, not the occupation. Why did I say no, not the occupation? Because we can't use the articles. But you might ask, doesn't this make the sentence grammatically incorrect? No. Yes, but no. First of all, the headline is not a sentence. Second of all, articles take too much space. So if I'm going to give the accurate use of those articles in the headline, I won't be having any room for the actual headline or the actual news. Okay, so student council plans riot. The original sentence, this is the headline, the original sentence would be the student council is planning to hold a riot. Let's write it down. So the original sentence is the student council plans holding a riot, or is planning to hold a riot. This is a sentence, but this is a headline. And what I need is a headline, not a sentence. So we remove the We remove verb to be. This one becomes in the present tense. We remove these unnecessary additions, and it becomes student council plans riot. Why did I capitalize each word while the example does not capitalize the word? This depends on the preferences of the place where you're working at. Some newspapers prefer to have the capitalization of each word other than prepositions. Other, let's say, newspapers or companies or commissioners, they prefer to have the capitalization of the first word only. And if there are certain names of places, people, or committees like this one, to make them stand out from the rest of the headline. Okay, now this, the third rule or the fourth rule, which is using a comma in place of and, is very important, because if I give you a title or not a title, a headline, and I ask you to translate it and you add the word and, that means you're going to lose at least half a point, because it's very important to remember that in headlines, we replace and with a comma. This is originally journalism and English teachers quit. But we don't use and, instead we use a comma. Sometimes we use but, never and, but sometimes we use but, and other times instead of but, we use semicolon. Team tired, but wins. Sorry, but wins. Okay. Students and teachers head to court, for example. Okay, so and is replaced and we use a comma, but is replaced and we use a semicolon. Keep all parts of a verb on one line. Winning students to travel to moon. It should be on a same line, shouldn't separate between them. And this makes sense because even the space will only be limited to one line. Do you have any questions? So far, any questions? Do we have any questions? Calling once?
No.
Calling twice? Okay, sold. Let's move forward. Keep adjectives and the nouns they modify on the same line. Again, makes sense. Students want more say in cafeteria choices. Avoid double meanings. And this is the most important part we'll discuss today, which is avoiding ambiguity. Avoiding what? Avoiding what?
Ambiguity.
Ambiguity. And when we discuss ambiguity, we're talking about all types of ambiguity, whether lexical at word level or syntactic at the entire structure level or semantic. Why? Because if you use a headline with two possible meanings, first, you're going to confuse the reader, and second, they're not going to trust your credibility because they're going to think that you're trying to outsmart them, to manipulate them. Why is your headline having double meaning? So what is the double meaning here? Sorry, let me erase that. So what's the double meaning here? What's the double meaning here?
March.
Yeah, excellent. The word March and August. So March means two things. A march, like the actual marching, moving from one place to another, the protest. And then there is marsh, like marsh. Okay? I'll be giving examples so things will be easier, inshallah. Again, the word march has two meanings: protest, demonstration, and the month. So how can the march plan for next August? So does this mean that the thing that is planned on March is going to be moved to August? Or there will be a march in next August? Okay? Don't repeat words. Students vote for student council. Students vote for council. Okay? So you don't need the repetition of the word student. Use plain, simple words. Instead of confrontations, we use clash. Instead of horrified, scared. Okay? Netters take top trophy. Netters is the team that plays with the net, so that's the tennis team. So it's just easier to say tennis team wins state. Okay? It means that they won the championship. Avoid names, we mentioned this. We said unless the name is important, don't say the name. Elections delayed, instead of President Mahmoud Abbas postpones or delays elections. So what's the key here? What's the major point here? The name or the postponing of the elections? Unless, again, the name is important. If the name is important, you use the name. Mahmoud Abbas or President Abbas or Abbas postpones elections. So here, it depends on the value of the name in relation to the news. So if the news discusses everything that is related to the postponing itself, then who postponed isn't important. But if the news explains in detail why it is bad for Abbas to have postponed the elections, then his name is important. So it depends on the value of the name in relation to the news that is given. We said it has to be active, not passive. Principal wins bull riding contest. Bull riding contest won by principal. Lines should be the same length, makes sense. Okay, avoid headlines. Tamam. Okay, same thing. Now look at Iraqi head seeks arms. The problem with this headline is that it has two meanings. The word head means ra's. The word arm means dira, right? So what's the meaning of رأس العراقي يبحث عن أذرعة? Doesn't make sense. The meaning of this headline, Iraqi head means Iraqi official, مسؤول عراقي. Arms here is referring to weapons. يبحث عن أسلحة. Okay? So the use of head and arms created a confusion. It's confusing. So instead, it should have been either Iraqi official seeks arms or Iraqi head seeks weapons. To change one word to avoid what? To avoid what?
Ambiguity.
Ambiguity. I want you to look at the one before last. Juvenile court to try shooting defendant. To try shooting defendant. Try has two meanings. يحاكم, prosecute, أو يجرب. وغالبا انتوا أول حاجة خطرت على بالكم يجرب، لأنه غالبا ما بتعرفوش try بمعنى prosecute. To try shooting defendant معناته إيش؟ بدها تحاول تطخ على defendant. That doesn't make sense. So what do we need to do? We need to avoid any linguistic ambiguity.
Ambiguity.
Okay. So what do I do? How do I write the article? Sorry, the headline. How do I translate the headline is exactly how I write the headline. Sometimes the headline in the target text is 100% different from the headline in the source text. And it is absolutely fine. Why is it absolutely fine? Because your purpose is to attract the reader. So what's the point if you stick to the source text and then not attract the target audience? Then the headline that you've translated is useless. The article that you've translated is useless because no one's going to read it. If they don't like the headline, no one's going to read the article. So read the article. Identify the underlying theme. Make sure you understand the purpose behind this article and then write the title or the headline. When I say title, I mean headline. So I don't need to keep correcting myself. If you hear me say title, because title is usually used with articles, with essays and reports. So if you hear me say title, know that I'm talking about the headline. Express the theme in an active voice. Avoid using hustle and as few words as possible. We don't want a lengthy headline. Active verbs lend immediacy to a story, which means give me a verb that has action, not a verb that like thinks, assumes, imagines. These are not active verbs. We're talking about strike, clash, hit. So give me something that gives action to the story. And they attract readers. Keep it in present simple. Keep it simple. And give enough information to give the reader an impression of the story, but not everything. Just enough to attract them. Don't try to be cute and don't ask questions. Why don't try to be cute? Because we're not looking for you to be cute. We want to read. We want the headline to be suitable and attractive. Make sure you don't misrepresent the story, which means try to be accurate with the information you're providing. And for example, you want to talk about what's happening in Sheikh Jarrah, and you say, for example, أهالي شيخ جراح يقاتلون المستوطنين، يعتدون على المستوطنين، يضربون المستوطنين. You're misrepresenting the entire story. You're changing the voice, you're changing the facts, you're doing everything really wrong. So make sure that you present the story with the right voice, with the right angle, with the right choice of words. And make sure that the headline can stand on its own, which means you provide enough information. Okay? Now look at the first headline. Lawyers give poor free legal advice. What's the problem here? What's the problem? Someone raise her hand. Someone raise her hand, please. Raise your hands. Just a second. I want to see who's attending. Okay. Go ahead, Iman. Or Amani. I want to hear from Amani. Go ahead, Amani.
Yes, there is a repetition of two unnecessary words, such as there are poor and free.
Why did you say it's repetition?
Because there are unnecessary, they give unnecessary meaning.
Uh-huh.
We can use we can use only one word and give the meaning.
So lawyers give free legal advice. That's what you mean, right?
I don't hear.
I said, so you think it should be lawyers give free legal advice?
Yes.
Okay, good. Iman.
So that it's a structural ambiguity
Mhm.
because there are adjectives. It may poor free legal advice. Maybe a free is an adjective to legal, to advice with legal, or it could be separate. We can separate it, right?
Free?
Yes.
Okay. Arij?
I think that it is with the word poor. It may be that it means that
Excellent.
the
Okay.
advice is poor or the people.
Excellent. Yes, that's the answer. So the word poor, the problem is with the word poor. Do they give low quality, bad quality legal advice, or do they give the needy people, the poor people, free legal advice? So the problem is with the adjective or the word poor. Is it an adjective for advice, or is it a noun? The sentence or the headline is originally, the lawyers are giving the poor free legal advice. So here, poor refers to poor people. But because of the structure of the sentence or the headline, it could be understood as giving bad legal advice. Okay, second one. Fund set up for beating victims can. فند ايش معناها؟ حد بيعرف ايش الفند؟ صندوق الدعم.
فند تمويل.
ايوه صندوق التمويل. لما بيقولوا فند معناها صندوق التمويل.
inward beating.
ايش معناها؟ ايش المشكلة؟ عشان ما نضيعش وقت اكثر، الفكرة وين؟ انه هل صندوق التمويل معمول عشان احنا نروح نضرب الفيكتيم سكين، ولا معمول عشان الفيكتيم سكين انضرب؟ تمام. تاني، هنا هل احنا صندوق التمويل عاملينه عشان احنا اللي نضرب for beating، عشان حد يعني انا بمول اللي بدهم يضربه، ولا عشان هو مضروب فاحنا بدنا نعطيه مصاري عشان يعني يحسن وضعه؟ تمام.
That's a structural ambiguity, right?
Yes. اطلعوا لي على آخر واحدة، آخر مثال. Stolen painting found by tree. This has two meanings. يا إما شجرة لقتها، by هنا بمعنى من قبل، وجدتها شجرة stolen painting، يا إما معناها إنه وجدناها بالقرب من شجرة. طبعا هو المنطق بيقول إنه الشجرة مش هتلاقيها، تمام ماشي معاكم، بس هي الفكرة إيش؟ إنه أنت you shouldn't when you write a headline or translate a headline, you shouldn't be making these mistakes. Now I have a question. Can we find... نعم؟
بدي أسأل خلص بعد ما تسألينا.
اسألي يا إيمان.
إنه حتى لو كان المعنى بعيد، يعني مثلا إنه بايتري هنا مستحيل حد يفكر بطريقة تانية، فإنه عادي لو عملنا هيك ولا
لا مش
ممنوع
عادي. ليش مش عادي؟ لأنه you shouldn't make the mistake. Even if it's a small mistake, even if it's not a mistake, not a mistake, but even if it is an unnoticed mistake, you shouldn't be making the mistake.
It's a mistake if we're, oh, okay.
So yeah, at the end, it's a mistake. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, let me. Now my question, can I like open or read a newspaper that is so famous and so well known, but has bad titles? Is it possible? Is it?
Maybe, yeah. Why not?
Yes.
Maybe.
Yes, the answer is yes. Why? Because these are journalists and they're humans. So they might write good stuff, they might write bad stuff. They might feel bored at work, so they don't give the best performance. But usually it won't be there in well-known websites and newspapers because they usually have editors. And editors make sure that the final copy that is sent to the audience is in its best form. Okay, what's the first thing you notice about this title? Yes, Arish?
It is long.
Okay, sometimes it can be long because see, this is a long article, so it might be long. Yeah, what else do you notice? Does he use capitalized letters in every word?
No.
Okay, so we
No.
understand that the preference of this newspaper is that it does not use capitalization in its headlines. Let's check random headlines. Yeah, here too, okay. And yup, here too. So here too. And here too. So we can actually say that this Al Jazeera prefers to have a capitalization of proper nouns such as places, countries, and the first word only without capitalizing the rest of the words. Iran Foreign Ministry denies US hostage swap imminent. So we notice that there are a lot of deleted words to make this sentence a sentence. And it makes sense. It does not have any, let's say, it doesn't have any ambiguities, right? Feels good. US top diplomat, China acting more repressively, aggressively. So apparently repressively and aggressively are quoted from the article itself because they are written between converted commas. At least 26 killed in Bangladesh boat crash. It should be at least 26 people were killed in Bangladesh in the boat crash in Bangladesh. This is the original sentence, but it's been cramped into a short, direct one. Can someone tell me why do we have past tense here? Is this past tense?
It's passive. It was passive.
Good, excellent. So it's not past simple. It is more like here said that we shouldn't write in passive, right? But here we're interested in what? In the number because it was a crash. يعني if it wasn't a crash, let's say عندنا مجموعة من المسلحين اللي قتلوا 26 شخص. Armed men or gangsters killed 26 in Bangladesh مثلا. لكن هنا كان هنا عبارة عن حطام قارب وتحطم. فمين يعني مين اللي بده يكون did the active verb? No one. So here we're interested in the fact that 26 died in Bangladesh boat crash. وضح ليش هنا؟
بس طيب إذا كان مثلا نحكي عن اشتباكات أو كذا
أنا
وبدنا نقول عدد
حكيت gangsters kill 28 or 26 in Bangladesh. Gangsters اللي هم تعون العصابات. أو يا ستي police kills 26 in في أي مكان.
Okay,
إيش؟
so we use active voice.
Yeah, active. If we know who did the killing, active. If we don't know who did the killing, or it's something natural, we can't use the passive, the active. Traveling the Middle East will be the easiest it's ever been. Can someone tell me how we have the, will, a full sentence here, and why? I kind of mentioned this. I'll ask, is this a
Is it
headline?
an art?
Is this a news headline?
It seems like an article.
Good.
Like it's
And we
about
said,
tourism.
this is a title. This is a title. That's why I keep saying, if I keep saying title, it's because, you know, I don't mean a title, I mean a headline. But this is the big difference between an article and a headline. Here, this is not news. It's not news. Here, he's going to explain to us how the Middle East is going to become, like how traveling in the Middle East is going to become the easiest it's ever been. He's not giving us a piece of news. He's not telling us about something that's happened. He's telling us about an entire story of how it's going to change in the Arab world after the normalization agreements with the occupation. Okay? So we understand why here we have the things we said we shouldn't be having when we write a headline, because this is not a headline, it's a title. Yeah, Iman?
I was answering just.
اوكي. طيب هيجينا في الامتحان يا مس تحطي لنا جملة وتقولي لنا ترجميها على انها تايتل ومرة ترجميها على انها هيدلاين؟ نو. لكن بجيب لك وبحكي لك انه هذا هيدلاين، او انا من هان يعني احنا حيكون شغلنا على الهيدلاينز موستلي، الا يعني لو بدنا نحكي شوية عن التايتلز تبعون الارتكلز كذا. بس يعني الشغل اللي بيلزمنا فيه اكثر بيكون في الهيدلاينز. ليش؟ لانه في الارتكل غالبا حاجة كيف بيكون يعني الأخبار للجميع، الأخبار للجميع. الارتكلز عادة سواء الاسايز، الارتكلز اللي هو الأشياء المخصصة أكثر، هذه بيكون الأودينس تبعها هو أساسا بده يقرأ الموضوع. تمام؟ فبيكون الاتراكشن ليفل أنا اللي بدي أشتغله أقل من الهيدلاين، لأن الهيدلاين it's a piece of news and you want the people to read it. Here you want the people to read it, بس let's say it already has an audience. It already has people who are going to read it. So the work that you have to do is sometimes less. زي مثلا